So stay locked in. We're going to be talking about a 30-year-old dude who is claiming that Jay-Z is his pops. So we're going to find out if Jay-Z is going to be liable anyway and what that story is all about. But Jigga Man may be the latest rapper who's going to be owing some back child support. So we're going to talk about that. But before we go too far, I want to say what's good, everybody. I'm the Dope Black Lawyer, a.k.a. Josh Jones, ESQ, and this is Law and Hip Hop. This is the number one place for you to get legal news and advice from a dope black lawyer so that you can, learn from the culture and not, end up in situations where you don't know what to do or know where to go when you need a lawyer. Every week we're going to break down some of the top stories that are impacting black people in law, hip hop, entertainment, and also just popular culture in general. So it's going to be a good time. We're going to try to make it fun. Again, welcome to Law and Hip Hop. If it's your first time, type new in the chat. If you've been here before, type OG, and let us know where you're watching from. So me, every week I'm live from the 305, which is Miami, and let us see where you're watching from today. Anybody in the chat? Okay. So let's just keep going. The first story we're going to talk about is involving Gervonta Tank Davis. He's been in the news a lot lately for his big boxing match recently with Ryan Garcia. He knocked Ryan out. I think it was like the 5th round, maybe the 8th round, but whatever it was, the dude got punched in his body and didn't want to fight anymore. He quit. Well, Tank, unfortunately, is facing some time. Luckily, it's going to be at the crib. He's going to be on home detention relating to a 2020 car accident. He was behind the wheel driving a Lamborghini SUV, early morning time, and he crashed into a 2004 Toyota Solera in his hometown, Baltimore. So it says that he left the scene and now he's being sentenced for 90 days. So luckily no one was hurt too bad. It wasn't a fatal type of situation like with the football player out in Las Vegas. So he's gonna get 90 days of home detention. He'll be with his trainer and he'll probably be chilling, training, and doing whatever it is he's gonna be doing. Hopefully reflecting a little bit about why it's important to pay attention while you're driving. 2:00 in the morning possibly was under the influence of some type of alcoholic substance or whatnot. So just making better decisions as someone who has a lot to lose. So, something we can all learn from. So if you're ever out there, you drive and you feel like you're good, think about it, make plans before you even get in that situation to make a impaired decision. I'm going to go out drinking tonight, so I'm going to take an Uber. I'm going to take have a designated driver and things like that. All right. We're going to go back now. We're going to talk to you about the Jordan Neely situation that happened in New York City. We talked a lot about it last week. The Michael Jackson impersonator who was strangled to death by the former Marine thug Daniel Penny. Last week we didn't know Daniel Penny's name. We just knew he was a former Marine. And now we do at least know his name. We know that he's from Long Island and that he was traveling to the city looking for possibly a bartending job. So, they've described him as some type of hero from, his time in the military and talked about him being such a great leader and things like that. Before we even knew who he was, though, we were already given, the crazy information, the bad information about the victim, Jordan Neely, telling us how many times he had been arrested and what his family situation was like and things like that. So as usual, the media kind of is painting the picture that they want to paint, but the people aren't having it. So there have been big protests in New York City. The people have been on the track. Police have been trying to keep the protests from getting out of control. They claim the protesters were getting aggressive, and the police then became aggressive as they tried to arrest some of the people. So one of the biggest issues is that so far the district attorney has not made a determination as to whether or not they're going to charge Penny at all. He says that they're investigating, and we talked about the different charges last week. Depending on whether or not they believe there's intent, whether or not it wasn't something that he should have known would have led to someone's death, or the different varying degrees of manslaughter versus murder. So it seems as though, from what some of the people in New York who kind of have more insight, it seems like the DA may be leaning towards letting a grand jury make the determination as to whether or not to file charges on Penny, which is kind of like a cop-out political way to take his hands off of the situation, when in reality, he's the DA, and he's the one who could make the decision. So the grand jury would be a group of citizens, and they kind of serve like a jury in a case like what everybody has seen before on TV, except it's private. They hear evidence only from one side, so they'll get all the evidence from the prosecution that they want to present, and then they'll make a determination as to whether or not there's enough information for the case to go forward to a regular criminal trial, where there'll be a jury who will make the determination as to whether or not Daniel Penny is guilty or not guilty. But the more that I see, I mean, it's crazy. There were people on the video apparently saying, "Hey, man, you got a hell of a chokehold. Stop before you kill him." And people are telling them that. So if you can hear that on the video, I don't know how well the story that it was not intentional. He was trying to be a hero to the people, when from everything we know, Jordan Neely was not aggressive, outwardly aggressive. He was loud, but not threatening to touch anyone. He wasn't doing anything to anyone. So we'll see how that plays out. Staying in New York, because I got a group of friends. So I went to law school in New York. So I got a group of friends from New York who are always trying to, come at Florida for how crazy Florida is and all the stuff you see in Florida. So we're going to stay in New York right now. We're going to go to Rikers Island, very infamous jail in New York. And we're going to talk about a legal aid staffer. So legal aid is an organization that helps people who are unable to afford legal services to get access to legal services. So it's a fantastic organization, all right? No doubt about it. And Tatiana King, who is a law school graduate but not a lawyer, was posing as a lawyer to visit an inmate who she was trying to smuggle weed and tobacco to. So, she said she was a lawyer. She had been there before, but the inmate who she was going to see was not somebody who she should have been there to see. A drug-sniffing dog was able to find the drugs that Tatiana was trying to bring in, and now Tatiana is going to join that inmate at Rikers, I imagine. So she was charged with trying to smuggle. She's going to face actions. If she was trying to be a lawyer, this definitely is not going to help her cause. She probably will not be allowed to practice law. So it was a very poor decision if she did what they're saying. But it's just one of those things. Like, this day and age, you just gotta kind of know like what you can't get away with, right? That does not seem like something that you should be able to get away with in 2023. So that's an unfortunate story. And we're gonna stay in New York, because New York, y'all get it today. So longtime New York resident and former president of the United States, Donald Trump, he was just found liable for charges where a woman, her name was E. Jean Carroll, accused him of rape and sexual abuse and defamation. So he was not found liable for rape, but he was for sexual abuse and defamation. A jury awarded her $5 million. Of course, Donald Trump didn't actually show up, but he did have a video deposition where he went a little bit crazy talking about the rules are different for rich and powerful and famous people, and you get to do things to people that other people can't do. So, he was asked, do you consider yourself to be rich, famous? And he said, I do, very. So the jury did side with her. He claims he doesn't know her. He said that she was not his type. He wouldn't have, done the things to her that she accuses, just because I guess he's trying to insinuate she's not attractive in his opinion. I don't know who he's attractive to in their opinion, but everybody has an opinion, right? So anyway, he said she was coming up with all this stuff because she wanted to sell a book. Well, the jury didn't agree, and hopefully she's able to get that bread out of Trump, because he's very stealthy. He tries to not pay his debts, but she does get some vindication. She does get to show that she was, what she alleges is believed, and she was heard. So that's cool. The downside is that none of the stuff that this dude does matters. He has a base of people who love him, and it probably strengthens his cause. As you know, he's the leading candidate right now for the Republican nomination for the presidency, and it's a civil case. It's not a criminal case. So, he's not a felon. He's still eligible to run for president. He had similar situations when he ran for president the first time. If you remember, there was a lot of talk with the Trump University and, all that stuff. And he's still eligible. So, I mean, tell us, what do you think about the situation? Do you think that Donald Trump should be eligible to run for president, or do you think there should be something in place that will keep him from being able to do that right now? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't believe anybody still even wants him to be the president, other than the fact that he's a good soundbite, because the dude is obviously special. Moving on to the next story. Out in Oakland, so we're going to get off of New York just for a little bit, but out in Oakland, there's an announcer. His name's Glen Kuiper, and he was on the air, and he was using a racial slur during a broadcast. He may try to say it was an accident, but tell me what you think. I'm going to play the clip for you right now. Get it queued up. Where is it? That's not the one. It's gonna be this one. All right, so
we had a phenomenal day today. Negro League Museum and Arthur Bryant's Barbecue.
So I don't know if you could hear that, but he's sitting there with his partner, and he's saying, we had a phenomenal day today. Negro League Museum and some barbecue place they were at in Kansas City. So the Negro League Baseball Museum is in Kansas City, and they were out in Kansas City for the a game. They're the Oakland A's. They were playing the Kansas City Royals. So they were out there. I want to make sure you could hear that, because I don't think you could. I'm going to do it again.
We had a phenomenal day today. Negro League Museum and Arthur Bryant's Barbecue.
So Negro League Museum, Arthur Bryant's Barbecue. So, this story was talking about it, and this is actually from 2020. Same dude.
Centennial celebration of the founding of the Negro Leagues. How about that? That's great. Some of the teams actually are wearing Negro League uniforms. Nice gesture by the Giants. They have 6 cutouts of Negro League legends in the dugout and also just past the dugout where some of the other players are sitting.
So as you can hear, this guy uses nigger and negro interchangeably. He was suspended by the team for like a week or something like that. That was the only consequence that he faced. A lot of people were thinking that he might get fired, like the lady, I don't know if the video is on here, but the lady from the Mississippi radio station who said, "For shizzle my nizzle," right here.
Come up with.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Before we know it, she'd have a Snoop Dogg tattoo on her shoulder.
For shizzle, my nizzle.
I'm telling you. Julie, what do you think about that? Huh, she says.
Well, get this.
So the lady here said, "For shizzle my nizzle." Nizzle is another word that's used for nigga as well. You know, this white woman in Mississippi ended up losing her job. People are calling for the same thing for Kuiper. And coincidentally, at the same time, just to contrast it, but Bob Huggins, the West Virginia University basketball coach, University of West Virginia, whatever it is, he was on the radio and he used a homophobic slur, and the university took great action. So they only suspended him 3 games. They didn't take his job, but Bob makes $4 million a year, and he had a long-term contract. And they made his contract year to year. So now every year they have the right to renew his contract. And they also took it from $4 million to $3 million a year. So, you know, so that means Bob is going to lose millions of dollars if they keep him on for multiple years. But also, typically when you have a contract with a coach, if you fire that coach, you have to pay out the entire amount of the contract. Well, now they can fire Bob Huggins without having to pay out the contract because his conduct, there was probably some type of conduct clause in his contract that allowed this. But now because of his conduct, he's on a year-to-year contract, so there are no additional years to pay out. So, I mean, Bob Huggins, what he said was even crazier, honestly. It was even crazier, but what he was saying, he went on and on. He was on a radio show, and he just went in, but he probably should have lost his job too. But the monetary repercussions were significant, so, you know, they hit him in his pocket where it hurts just as much, you know. So moving on, we're going to head down south to Texas. Got a couple Texas stories, both kind of tragic. There was a driver outside of a Texas migrant shelter, so people coming over from other countries to crossing the border to Texas are at a shelter, and a 34-year-old gentleman named George Alvarez was driving his car, lost control, and hit 18 people. Crazy, 18 people, 8 of who died, 10 who suffered injuries. He tried to flee. The people detained him, and, you know, he was charged with manslaughter for the 8 counts, as well as 10 counts of aggravated assault, and given a bail of $3.6 million. So that's awful. I think this comment right here from Dorian was in regards to Trump. But, you know, we see that the other people do go to jail. So, you know, George Alvarez, he killed these people, and he is now in jail unless he's able to bond out. So it'll be interesting to see what the families of these people do, if any of them try to take legal action, maybe against the shelter, for maybe, you know, the place where they had them waiting in line to be you know, taken into the shelter was not safe. Maybe they'll say it was foreseeably unsafe, that people should have known that it was a risk that a speeding car could have hit the people. And we'll keep following that, and we'll keep updating that as well. A story that we've all heard a lot about, also very tragic, out in Allen, Texas, involves a 33-year-old shooter who is considered a neo-Nazi sympathizer, possibly a white supremacist, although it's not clear if he's white. But essentially, he took the mass shooter gun of choice, the AR-15, to a shopping mall and just started unloading on people, and he killed several people, including almost an entire family, a security guard, and all types of people. There happened to be an officer there that day, and the officer was able to kill the gentleman. Garcia was his last name, who took all these, who did all these shootings. This is kind of a similar situation, not factually, but the type of law that they would look to for whether or not it was there was any type of legal case. But remember, we talked about Glorilla, we talked about Lovers and Friends festivals, both having stampedes and there not being enough security. They should have known there should have been more security or things like that, and they didn't do what they needed to do to protect the people who were there, spending their money, patronizing those concerts. Let me make a similar argument for the people who were here at this mall, that there should have been security in place who could have prevented as many people from dying in general. There just happened to be an officer there who was able to kill the shooter. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot more going on with that story. Also, very tragic. Allen, Texas is right outside of Dallas, Texas. So yeah, we kind of alluded to it. We're going to go back to BK, Marcy to be exact. You got Jay-Z, who is alleged to be the father of a young man, a 30-year-old young man. His name is Ramirez Satterwaith, and he claims to be Jay-Z's secret child. His mother filed several, paternity suits in the past in different places. And back in 2011, she did in New Jersey, seeking child support from the rapper. Jay-Z has not spoken out about it, but they want to make Jay-Z take a DNA test, and so far Jay-Z has not participated, not cooperated in any of the efforts from against him in this case. And in New Jersey, there's a statute of limitations for paternity cases. Well, there are in every place, but in New Jersey, where this most recent suit is being held, it says that to establish paternity, a suit must be brought within 5 years after the child reaches adulthood. So that's 18. So in New Jersey, a paternity case must be filed before the child whose paternity is in question reaches the age of 23, meaning at any time between birth and 23 years old. So this young man is 30. It sounds like they may have, waited too long for any type of paternity to be possible, but we will see. All right, so we're going to leave New York. We're going to come down to Florida. We got a sad story involving a football player for the Tampa Bay Bucks. His 2-year-old daughter, Araya Barrett, died by drowning in their pool. It happened early in the morning. They took her to the hospital. She was pronounced dead. She just celebrated her second birthday, but it seems as though she snuck out of the house, was able to reach the pool. It's so critical that when we have pools and any type of hazards, that we properly protect the people who need the protection the most, which is going to usually be children, elderly, and maybe people with special needs. But a gate around the pool, a safety fence around the pool would have prevented this. This happens all the time in other places. Like if you're at a commercial pool or some type of public pool outside of your own residence, and they don't have the proper safety procedures, you can bring a suit against that potential against that place for negligence, and that violation makes it a pretty easy case to bring. So I encourage everyone to make sure their pools are safe, make sure they're doing the right thing to protect their own families as well as others who may see the pool and decide they want to try to get in it just because people love pools. Kids especially, they'll see the pool and they'll just want to get in. So make sure you have that fence and you're able to prevent people from getting in. So we talked about the story a little bit, but Devin Willock was killed in the incident that involved the University of Georgia football player Jalen Carter that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Jalen Carter probably lost a couple of bucks. He was probably a top 5 pick. He ended up getting picked, I think, in the top 15. So Devin Willock's father filed a suit against UGA against Jalen Carter. The estate of the young woman who died, as well as I believe there was a strip club involved too that they sued. So apparently they were leaving Toppers International Show Bar. Sounds like a strip club to me. I've never been there. I'm not saying it because I've been there, but it sounds like a strip club. You know, the SUV that LaCroix was driving was going 104 miles an hour. When it left the road, it hit 2 power poles and several trees, and her blood alcohol level was 0.197 when the legal limit is 0.08 in Georgia. So, we'll talk more about this, but the lawsuit was filed in Gwinnett County, which is probably where the accident happened, because typically that's kind of where you look to bring your cases. And Toppers may be responsible because of something called the dram shop laws. So the dram shop laws say that an establishment that serves alcohol to its patrons could be held responsible for the conduct of those patrons if something like this happens. So we'll keep following this story, and we'll report back. So just to do a quick recap on the stories that we just covered. So we talked about Gervonta Davis. He got 90 days of home detention for a hit and run incident. We talked about Jordan Neely and the protesters who were out there, updates with the information about Daniel Penny and whether or not the DA is going to charge Daniel Penny or leave it to the grand jury. We talked about a legal aid staffer who pretended to be a lawyer to try to smuggle in weed and tobacco to an inmate who was accused of attempted murder. We talked about Donald Trump being held liable in a civil suit for sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll. We talked about the Oakland A's announcer, Glen Kuiper, who repeatedly has referred to the Negro Leagues as the Nigger Leagues. And we talked about the 18 people who were hit by 34-year-old George Alvarez. 8 of these people died due to the high-speed crash that they suffered at a shelter for migrants in Texas. We talked about the mall shooting case in Texas that involved a AR-15 causing the death of several people. We talked about Jay-Z possibly being Mr. Ramirez Satterwaith's father. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with that. And then we talked about Shaquille Barrett, who lost his daughter due to the pool drowning, and Devin Willock's father filing a lawsuit against the University of Georgia and several other parties for the death of his son, who actually was also an NFL prospect and had declared for the draft. So I'm sure they're going to be arguing about lost earning potential and things of that nature. So now we're going to move on to our top headline for the day. It's been talked about sort of intermittently, I guess, throughout the years, but nothing significant has ever come from it. But we're going to talk about reparations for black people in the United States of America. This primarily is related to slavery, being brought over to this country to work and build the country for free, and also not just the slavery itself, but for the conditions that have been suffered ever since slavery ended, with regard to racial oppression, the Jim Crow laws, disparities in every facet of life that you could think about, housing, healthcare, you name it. Talking about, whenever the government wants to, build highways and things like that, they almost inevitably, decide to repurpose black neighborhoods to build these highways. So the elimination of black people's homes, the, all of the above, right? So we're going to talk about that. So the governor of California a couple of years ago decided to put together a task force to kind of look into all of the things that I was just talking about. And the task force okays the state apology and payment. So the state of California, they think, should apologize for slavery and also make payments. They've come up with they've gone back and forth coming up with different calculations depending on when you came to California, how long you're, how long you lived in California, with an expected lifespan of 71 years, which is interesting because California came into the United States in 1850 already as a free state. So it wasn't just slavery. But it was still, unequal even back then, I'm sure. So they're saying that the apology itself, so just talking about the apology, which, at this point, most people probably could do without, but the apology must include a censure of the gravest barbarities carried out on behalf of the state, is what they want the apology to address. So they're saying by participating in these horrors, California further perpetuated the harms African Americans face, imbuing racial prejudice throughout society through segregation, public and private discrimination, unequal dispersal of state and federal funding. In the past, California apologized for placing Japanese Americans in internment camps during World War II and violence and mistreatment of Native Americans. So nobody has really ever fully addressed, slavery, the impact of slavery, and the need for reparations. At one point, it was suggested that black people get 40 acres and a mule way back in the day by General Sherman. It wasn't an actual proposal. It was just kind of a statement. But at this point, you got to look at it like everything else. What's the compound effect, compound interest? If you would have got 40 acres and a mule in 1869, arguably by now that 40 acres and a mule would have, multiplied just like anything does when you are able to, put good effort behind it and, whatever, just like, a retirement account, you invest in the stock market and, the expectation is that you're going to grow that account. So 40 acres and a mule doesn't even seem like it would be appropriate, in my opinion, anymore. Let's see what other people were talking about. So Elaine Brown, former Black Panther Party chairwoman, author of a really good book, A Taste of Power, she urged people to express their frustration through demonstrations. If you want, I think we got to be strategic about it. There's a professor from University of San Diego Law School, Roy Brooks. He says there's no way in the world that many of these recommendations are going to get through because of the inflationary impact. So for California alone, they anticipate that it would be somewhere between $800 and $1 billion in order to, compensate the families and the people who would be eligible for the compensation for the reparations payments, which is 2.5 times the state of California's annual budget. So from that regard, it sounds unrealistic, but it sounds like something that needs to be taken into consideration. There have been little things done in other places already. In a small suburb of Chicago, they've offered housing vouchers to black residents. But of course, so far that program hasn't worked. In other places, back to New York, there's a bill that acknowledges the inhumanity of slavery in the state, and they created a commission to study reparation proposals. But like California, nothing has been done for that yet. This California proposal seems like the most significant proposal for reparations that we've seen thus far. But still, with I'm not holding my breath that we're about to see somebody get reparations. So, but if it passes, it will be historic, right? Because there are no real reparations that have ever taken place for black people. So obviously, people are split. 77% of black Americans, compare 18% of white Americans, support reparations for descendants of enslaved people. So that's the percentage of U.S. adults surveyed who believe that the descendants of people who were enslaved in the U.S. should be repaid in some way, such as given land or money. Another thing is you see a lot descendants of slaves in the U.S., but slavery was not only in the U.S., and the European powers of the time all benefited from slavery. So it's not fair, or even doesn't make sense for black people from across the diaspora to pit themselves against each other, to say, well, you're not a descendant of slaves in America, you're a descendant of slaves in Haiti, or you're a descendant of slaves in Barbados. We don't care. There needs to be a group of a global pot of money that's put together by these European powers that all benefited from slavery, and they need to pay all of the people who suffered harm from slavery and the effects of slavery to this day, because the effects of slavery are still being seen today. Everywhere you look, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the types of jobs that people are able to get, due to whatever it is, qualifications, cronyism, and the like. So even if you're qualified, you're probably less likely to get the job over somebody else who's white, because the people who are hiring them are white, and they're going to look out a lot of times they're going to look out not just necessarily for white people because they're white people, but because those are the people who they know and who they're cool with. So even if it's just not racist, giving people the best benefit of the doubt, 9 times out of 10 they're still going to discriminate against black people. So it's deeper than just that. There's been reparations paid out, even from in the U.S. Reparations were paid to slave owners for losing their slaves. How crazy is that, right? Haitians had to pay reparations to the French for beating them in a war. Many Native Americans have gotten reparations, which they deserve. After the Holocaust, there were reparations that were paid out to the Jewish community, which they deserved. The United States, as of this year, last year, very recently, has been giving millions and millions of dollars to Ukraine, which I don't understand how that becomes the U.S.'s problem. But I think it's time. I think we are in a place where we're going to be able to continue this discussion about reparations, and there's going to be more information coming, and I'd love to talk about this with some experts. I'd love to hear in the chat what you think about reparations. Do you think that every country should be responsible for their own reparations, or do you think that there should just be some type of global reparations fund put together by all of the European powers and the United States? I'd be curious to know. So drop your comments in the chat if you have any feelings one way or the other about, how the reparations should play out. And then now it's time for, What the Florida. So every week we do want to bring a story about something happening in the state of Florida, because I'm in Florida, and we are kind of infamous at this point for having some of the crazier headlines and things going on. So we talked about Tiger Woods before, involving his ex-girlfriend Erica Herman. She's accused him of sexual harassment, and I guess a couple more details than I knew have come out, but we talked about it before. But he lured her out of his house, telling her he was going to take her on a vacation. When they pulled up to the airport, he jumped out of the car, and somebody, gave her the rundown, like, this is what's going to happen. You're not going back to the Woods residence. We're going to do boom, boom, boom. And, Tiger got her out of his crib like that. I did learn that he met the woman, she was working in his restaurant as the manager, and somehow he ended up wifing her, which is crazy. I mean, the dude is a billionaire, and, he meets white women in restaurants. There was the time in 2009, I think, when it came out that he was having a long-time affair with a Perkins waitress. So he knows what he likes. There's nothing wrong with that, I guess. But, right now what they're going back and forth about is it's a little bit of legal maneuvering going on, because she signed an NDA, but they're trying to say that there's a dispute about when their relationship started, so as to say whether or not the NDA would be valid, going all the way back to when it was initially signed and what it would relate to. So the real lesson here is, don't sign an NDA without having it reviewed by an attorney, and things like that. So now she's saying that he owes her. He promised her that she could live at the crib for a certain amount of years, and there's like 5 or 6 more years left on that. So it's like a 30,000 square foot house. It's like some huge crib. She's saying he should be responsible for paying for her to continue to live that way now. So I don't know about that. Sounds like she's a single lady. I don't know, even if he were responsible for, her housing and it needed to be nice. I mean, that sounds like overkill. He lives in one of the ritziest neighborhoods in Jupiter called Hobe Sound. And, yeah, I mean, pretty much that's it. So we're going to follow Tiger. He's an interesting guy, to say the least. It looks like his best golf days are behind him. He's got, injuries and things like that now, but he still is remaining in the news, and he is a billionaire. So we'll keep tuned on this story. So we're going to continue to talk about reparations. We're going to continue to talk about different stories that impact, black culture. We don't have anything on it, but there was a story this week. Tory Lanez, many people know, was found guilty for, beating up Meg Thee Stallion and kicking her out of a car at a party at one of the Kardashians' house. So he was convicted, and he went to the judge. He was pleading, like, don't ruin my life. He's facing like up to 20-something years. And then they're asking the judge. They were asking the judge for a new trial. The judge ruled on it and reminded him that he ruined his own life by making those decisions on that day, which isn't wrong, but it's kind of not what you want to hear if you're Tory, I'm sure. And he'll be facing sentencing, so he's facing about 20 years. The judge denied his request for a new trial. I'm sure they're going to appeal it, and I'd be surprised if he got 20 years, but he's definitely facing some time. So keep us in tune, and let us know what it is that you want to hear about, the stories that you care about, and we'll be sure to bring those stories to you. We want to make this show the best show for the people, because that's who we're doing it for. So anything you want to know about, if you want to know more about music, like or any rappers, any entertainers who want to hear more stories about, any type of specific entertainment, let us know. Just drop it in the comments. If you have any questions, you can drop those in the comments. You can also send an audio message to speakpipe.com/dopeblack-lawyer, or you can send an email to holla@dopeblack-lawyer.com, and we'll be sure to check that out and get back to you as soon as possible. If you need a lawyer, we have a network of dope black lawyers all across the nation who we can put you in touch with. So just be sure to use either one of those 2 ways, or the YouTube comments, I guess 3 ways, to get at us so we can get back at you. That's our show for today. I appreciate you staying tuned in. Thank you very much, and we'll holler at you next week. Peace.